Hi everyone, I'm back in the green. I don't know why. I thought, what should I pick for this video? And then something said, go back to the green again, go back to the green. And I'm thinking, okay, cool. I went back to the green now. And I'm coming online today to talk about TIs and intersectionality. Now, I made a post on Instagram about this subject. I made a two-parter. You know how I like to do. I like to make essays and shit. And then I thought it's not really going to hit. I need to actually tell people on camera so that they can understand what the situation is. Because from my mind, I noticed that a lot of TIs are bigoted. Like I said about the same thing. I noticed that a lot of TIs are bigoted in terms of gender expression, in terms of sexual expression, in terms of religious expression and spiritual expression, even in terms of race. And I'm just like, nah, I've started engaging a zero tolerance policy on that nonsense because I'm not here for it. It does not advance our community. It does nothing to help our situation because the very nature of our existence is down to bigotry in the first place. And I'm not the type of person that wants to put up with that shit. So let me explain to you guys why intersectionality is important in the discussion of TIs in particular, right? When it comes to pro-racial equity, the reason why that's important to learn is because the dehumanization of Black people, the continued narcissistic abuse against Black people, the outright aggressions, the microaggressions, the constant societal expectation for not only additional physical labor, but additional emotional labor, having everything that we do weaponized against us and for the benefit of people who are against us. All of that, if you look at the way Black people are treated, the way Black people have been treated through history, when it comes to redlining, when it comes to economics, you will see a lot of parallels with targeted individuals. I will even go so far as to say the Tuskegee experiment in America. Targeted individuals is basically like that, except they're not just experimenting with biological warfare, they're experimenting with energetic warfare with us too, and psychological warfare. So if you look at the Black community and you look at the different ways in which even the most normal conversations are weaponized against us in order to do us great emotional harm, you will see a lot of parallels with the way targeted individuals are treated. Learn your critical race theory, learn your history, and you will see how many parallels there are to fucking TIs and the way we are treated. So that's the first thing, pro-racial equity. If you are pro-TI, you are pro-racial equity. Because racial equity diminishes gang stalking in a huge way. Okay, because in the first place, the whole point of, mass genocide against the public is to make sure that the whole world is white. And all the women are subjugated and all the children are subjugated and they become resources. That's the whole point of this genocide in the first place. That's the whole point of endless cycles of empire. Is to ensure that the whiter you are, the better chance that you have of surviving on this planet. That's what it all boils down to. That's the reason why targeted individuals exist in the first place. So get to know your critical race theory. The second thing that I want to talk about is being pro-fam, pro-woman. Being pro-woman is important because if you look at the way women have been subject to forced lobotomies, I'm talking rich white women here, let alone women of color. You're talking about how women have been subject to lobotomies, thrown in mental health asylums, the second they stood up to rich, powerful white men. Or the second those rich, powerful white men or even middle-class white men decided that they didn't want to be bothered with their wives anymore and they wanted to pick up a new girl to be their fucking emotional and physical labor. The second they got bored and they decided they wanted someone else, they threw their wives in these mental health asylums to either have lobotomies or to be locked up in there for good so that the men could move on without being judged. And that's only a piece of the puzzle. That's only a piece of the puzzle, let alone the sex negativity, and I'll get to that in a second. the sex negativity, the queer phobia, both of which I'll talk about in a second. All of that is to do with fear of being seen as feminine, because to be seen as feminine is to be seen as submissive. There is more resentment. Look at the difference between Diddy and somebody like Trump, or somebody like even Jeffrey Epstein. There is more resentment shown towards somebody who seems to have effeminate qualities than towards somebody who seems to be outright masculine and straight. You can have two people who are trafficking kids, trafficking women, but in comparison to the one who is kind of on the spectrum sexually, like in comparison to that person, the other trafficker will get the benefit of the doubt more than the one who seems to be queer. Why do you think there's so many down low men? And believe me, that has an immediate effect on how women are treated as well. Like, in fact, it's all down to fear of the feminine and, truth be told, envy of women. But look at the way women are treated. Look at the way women are characterized. Even the most privileged women are characterized as beneath men. Just like even the most privileged perps, even the most privileged TIs are seen as being below perps. Doesn't matter what the race is, doesn't matter what the gender is. If you're a TI, you are game. You are just fodder for these assholes to be engaging in smear campaigns against you. Look at the history of how women are treated, not only in the West, but everywhere. The TI community are a lesser extent of that. And I'm going to get into the sex negativity and stuff in a minute. Speaking of pro-fam, pro-LGBTQ plus communities, let's be all the way fucking real, okay? I know a lot of people like to say, oh, it's gay people that are responsible for this. They're part of the cabal. Let me tell you something, right? There's a difference between ritual sodomy, meaning sodomy designed for alchemy and trafficking, and somebody being gay or queer, just living their lives. There's a huge difference between the fucking two. And what TIs like to do is conflate those things. And on top of that, conflate homosexuality and queer sexual identity with pedophilia. They like to do that shit. That's another thing that I'm sick of seeing. There is a huge, huge difference between somebody who just happens to be attracted to somebody of the same sex, or who just happens to be born in the wrong body. There's a difference between that and being members of the cabal. But us TIs in the community, for some reason, we can't tell the fucking difference. And I'm at a loss as to why that is. Because if anybody should know about being targeted, apart from the Black community, which is the most targeted community on the planet, apart from women who, no, it's not just Black people who are the most targeted, it's women as well. So they're joint up there, right? If there's anybody apart from Black people and women and brown people and women who should know exactly what it's like to be targeted, it's the queer community too. Did you remember the AIDS epidemic? There was a time where Reagan actually had the medication to treat people, or he knew about it, and he chose not to give it to certain gay people. It resulted in millions of deaths. We can sit here and we can say, oh, it's just careless, it's just careless. No, that was a whole fucking plague. They knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to get rid of gay people, and if they could get rid of Black people too, so much the better. Because Reagan was a... Let me fucking not. Let me not. But there were queer people dying by the millions. They were denied proper health care and allowed to die in their millions. And that's just in America alone, let alone the rest of the fucking world, let alone over here in the UK. They were allowed to die. Does that ring any familiarity to you? How many times have you been attacked by directed energy weaponry, and you've been trying to go to the hospital to get your scans, to have your body looked at to see what was wrong with you, and either you were ignored? Like, if you had specific symptoms that you had looked up and you wanted to talk to the doctor about them, how many of you were completely ignored just so that they could slap the paranoid schizophrenic label on you when your other illnesses started acting up? How many of you have gone through that? Had your illnesses deliberately ignored so that the torture of your body and the mutilation of your body could continue? Look at the gay community. You will see parallels with the TI community. When it comes to being pro-choice and sex positive, I'm going to start with the sex positivity first. With sex negativity, sex positivity is basically embracing somebody's sexuality, but also embracing the way somebody has sex. As long as they're safe, consensual, having fun, then basically you can do what you want. It's basically what sex positivity is. As long as it's safe, consenting, you're having fun, and there's no physical harm to you. That's essentially what sex positivity is. It's allowing you to have agency over your own sexuality, regardless of whether or not you actually want to have sex. Sex negativity is sex workers being devalued, adult entertainers being devalued, you know, people who sleep with a lot of people being devalued, or women sleeping with a lot of people being devalued, even women sleeping with no one being devalued. That's what sex negativity is, right? And that sex negativity makes way for honey traps at best. Because if a woman's holding herself back, or a man is holding himself back because of, you know, because of us being made to feel terrified about sex, when a honey trap comes along promising the world, it's easy to fall for that, because when you're a TI, you get lonely. That loneliness is due, ironically, to sex negativity, telling you that you're supposed to have sex a certain way, that you're supposed to be with certain people, you're supposed to be married, you're supposed to be in a relationship. Good luck with that when you're a targeted individual and you're being isolated. Sex negativity. So through sex negativity, you're having your isolation from sex weaponized against you. And then through this honey trap, this whole idea of you needing to commit and you needing to be with somebody for life, that is weaponized against you in order to infiltrate you and fuck up your life. I can think of at least one TI this has happened to. So at best, sex negativity can lead to honey trapping. It can lead to TIs being saddled with abusive partners specifically put there to make the TI even more vulnerable. Worst case scenario is that sex negativity could have people walking around, or perps walking around talking about how you're a prostitute or you're a deviant, so that already any protection for you or your body is cut off. This is for both men and women, by the way. They can spread rumors that you're a prostitute or a deviant to make sure that, to make sure that you don't get the help that you need. And it's not sex negativity to be averse to deviance or to be averse to abusers. Like, that's not a bad thing. You're supposed to be averse to those people. But when those rumors and those lies are used to cut you off from being protected, that's sex negativity. And when those rumors lead to you being violated en masse, like gang violated through vice trafficking, you know, with everybody thinking that you're willingly having people enter you when really you're being gang violated, that's also sex negativity. Sex negativity, slut shaming, it leads to the downgrade of your reputation, but that downgrade of your reputation, it also leads to the lack of regard for your safety, both as a woman and as a man. I mean, hell, sex negativity damages men, and men are the ones who put it there. Sex negativity even damages men. And men are the ones who made that shit happen. You know, what do you think happens to men who are sexual as well? What happens when they're sexual beings, when they like to have as much sex as possible, only to find themselves being violated? And then not only do people say, well, what did you do to bring it on? they act like he scored. Sex negativity hurts everyone. And as TIs, it can lead to us being honey trapped or worse. So we should know good and damn well that sex negativity does not fucking benefit anyone. Devaluing sex workers, it leads to them being more vulnerable to trafficking. Devaluing adult entertainers, it leads to them being trafficked in many cases. And that gives rise to trafficking victims being younger and younger. Sex negativity has that knock-on effect. So as a TI, you should be against slut shaming. You should be against sex negativity as a targeted individual. It doesn't make sense that you're sex negative and a TI. It doesn't fucking make sense. Which leads me on to pro-choice. Now, people think that being pro-life and pro-choice is about being anti-abortion versus abortion, right? No, it's not about that. It's about being anti-safe abortion and being pro-safe abortion. It's being anti-destigmatized abortion and pro-destigmatized abortion. That's what it's really about. And that also plays into sex positivity and sex negativity. Imagine as a targeted individual that, God forbid, you should be honey trapped, because that's happened to women who were victims of undercover police. There was one undercover police officer called Mark something, and he impregnated 6 women. And those 6, I don't think he impregnated 6 women. He impregnated at least one of them. At least one of them was a mother. I'd have to look at the details again, get the article and get back to you. But he impregnated at least one of these women. And that person grew up to be a full adult, knowing that their father is somebody that honey trapped them, and that was the only reason they were with their mother. Do you understand? Without safe abortion, it leads to situations like that. It leads to products of assault and rape, which is not only traumatic for the child, but it's also incredibly traumatic for the mother. It's incredibly traumatic. And on top of that, for TI fathers too, because TI fathers get honey trapped too. They get honey trapped, somebody gets pregnant, and they're kept from seeing their children. So being pro-choice, pro-safe abortion, I'm sorry, but even though abortion should be a last resort, it should be kept safe and it should be kept legal, even if it should be kept rare. Because a TI who ends up being honey trapped, God forbid, or a TI who goes through even worse than that and ends up being trafficked, with safe legal abortion there, women have an out. And even male TIs can have an out should the female honey trapper decide to pursue abortion or pursue contraception. It frees the TI. So being pro-choice, as much as it seems barbaric to you, it's actually sparing a lot of pain in the future for a lot of people. Because we're not even just talking about conception and development. We're talking about what happens when the child comes out of the womb. Now remember, we're TIs. How many TIs do you know are suffering because social services won't leave them alone and won't leave their kids alone? I know at least of one TI. You know, social services keep fucking intervening with their kid. Keep intervening with this person's kid. Keep fucking with them all the time. Custody is being used against them. And at worst, that can actually trap them to the person that they're abused by. For life. Even though a lot of TIs, if not all of them, love their children, would die for their children, don't regret their children being here. When the child gets here, the child is subject to all kinds of upheaval and stress and targeting because the parent is targeted or 2 parents are targeted. And then on top of that, social services want to come around and fuck with your kid. And on top of that, you've got to go through all the financial abuse that you went through before you got pregnant or before your partner had a kid. So it's the financial abuse. It's the civil service abuse. It's the constant microaggressions every day, the street theatre. You've got to go through all of that whilst looking after a complete stranger that you've just given birth to or your partner has just given birth to. And as for TI fathers having their children taken away, you know, I don't doubt there are situations like that going on. I don't know for sure, but I don't doubt that there are situations like that going on. I would be very shocked if there wasn't at least one TI father having custody problems. Because I know there are plenty of mothers that have custody problems. So being pro-choice as a TI, it makes a lot more fucking sense than being so-called pro-life. You're anti-safe abortion, and that's all that shit is. You're not anti-abortion, period, and you're not pro-life. You're just anti-common sense. And then we've got to get to the differently abled. Now, I've never known a lot of TIs to be ableist, like directly, but I've known a lot of TIs to say that mental health diagnoses aren't real or that physical health diagnoses aren't real. I've even said it, that it's just the DEWs, that it's just, don't get it twisted, right? I believe that certain illnesses that are caused by non-ionized radiation and ionized radiation are being covered up with diagnoses that are already pre-existing. I do believe that, right? But it doesn't mean that the illnesses have never existed, and it doesn't mean that they're not there. You see, this is the thing about gang stalking. Gang stalking has us so focused on trying to prove that we're not paranoid schizophrenic that we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, no, we're not mentally ill, we're not this, we're not that. I'm fine, because that's the direction they want us to go in. They either want us to say that we have a mental illness and gang stalking isn't real, or we don't have a mental illness and gang stalking is real. Those are the two options that they want to give us. It's a classic law of power. Classic law of power. Give them two options. Give them a lesser of two evils rather than one good and one evil. Never leave them with a choice that's desirable. That's a power move, and it's not even a very unique one. And that gives rise to a lot of ableism, a lot of fucking, oh, this neurodivergent stuff's a load of bollocks, like that type of shit. And what we don't realize we're doing is we're being ableist as fuck. Because in denying that neurodivergence exists, in denying that mental illnesses exist, in denying that antisocial personality disorders exist, what we're ultimately doing is we're ultimately playing into this lesser of two evils crap rather than demanding evidence. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if you have anything to do with targeting at all, if you are a targeted individual, I guarantee you have post-traumatic stress disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder at the very least. At the very least, let alone PMDD, let alone fucking borderline personality disorder. That is very common among abuse victims. Very, very common. PMDD for women, borderline personality disorder for everyone, fucking, what else? What's another one? Depression, anxiety, hormonal issues, because non-ionized radiation causes hormonal issues. And there are times where those hormonal issues are even caused deliberately. Not admitting those things is actually harming us. It's not helping us. So on top of denying all this, denying any of this is real, when we do have illnesses, we're likely to mask them. Not only because we know those diagnoses are often weaponized against us, we're not willing to entertain the pain that the torture has left us with, because we know that with mind control technology, our behavior can be affected. So what it's actually causing us to do, it's causing us to say that mental illness is not real. It is real. Why do you think the perps were chosen? Why do you think they want to drive us crazy? It is absolutely real. Just because it can be synthesized, it doesn't mean it's not real. And that is leading, that denial is leading to masking. The problems that masking causes is the more we try to act respectable, the more we try to act normal, is the more our illnesses and our sicknesses tend to come out. If you look through my social media and you look through all the rambling that I was doing, a lot of it was correct, but a lot of it was overthought. A lot of it was overthought. It's something that I tend to do when I'm spiraling. I overthink, right? That's what happens when you are masking, because people are so focused, the perps are so focused on calling you crazy in order to diminish your The perps are so focused on calling you crazy in order to diminish your admissibility in court. They're so focused on doing that, that your attention is actually taken away from healing yourself and from nurturing yourself. And it's put onto this respectability politics where now it's all about proving that you're not crazy in order to prove that gang stalking exists. Because remember the dichotomy that they leave you with. That leads to masking. And ironically, the more that you mask yourself is the more you're emotionally dysregulated. It's the more that you actually get sick. When you deny the sickness that this program has brought onto you, it makes you sicker. And on top of that, I'm going to be real, masking, it makes a lot of TIs codependent. It makes a lot of TIs codependent, which means TIs crave attention, crave company, but don't listen to the company that they're keeping. They don't pay attention to the company that they're keeping. They just need people around. That's another thing that masking does, because when you're focusing all your energy on trying to look normal, you're only 50% at best focused on what you're supposed to be doing. So that's what ableism causes. And on top of that, when it comes to physical disabilities are not looked at all. We only look at it from the context of what the DEWs are doing to us. But we don't bother to look up the symptoms and how to treat them or how to make them better. I mean, some of you do, but you only do that in terms of what to do to make yourself better, not what to do to actually emotionally cope with the debilitation that the DEWs leave you with. But that comes back to masking, doesn't it? Understanding the differently abled and understanding that sometimes the DEWs might leave us with illnesses that we might not be able to come back from. Accepting part of that as our reality. It can actually not only enable us to have vulnerability, to have empathy with those who are physically vulnerable, it allows us to cope with our own physical vulnerability and to know what to do when we find ourselves unable to cope. If I find myself debilitated and completely on my own, if I get shots in my hips again and shots in my back again, and I can't fucking walk and I'm on my own, I know what to do because I've prepared myself for that eventuality. I've prepared myself for that. And I prepared myself for that because I'm not masking anything. I've prepared myself physically and emotionally for the eventuality that they will debilitate me again. And I did that because I wasn't masking anything. I was being completely real and completely honest about my targeting. I'll let that die down. Yeah, so because I was being completely real and completely honest about my targeting, it actually allowed me to be able to better navigate my mental illnesses, to better navigate these things. And it also gave me a third option. I have mental illnesses, which not only does it not disprove gang stalking, But the only reason why I have the multitude of mental health illnesses in the first place is because of the fucking gang stalking. The gang stalking is evidence. So I've gone the third way and said all the problems that I have now is evidence of my gang stalking. All my health issues, mental and physical, are down to the gang stalking. This is the power that leaving masking and respectability behind gives you. On top of that, because you're not so busy trying to be something you're not, you can better prepare for the tactics of your gang stalkers. You can better understand your gang stalkers so that you can work around them. And on top of that, when TI stop the masking bullshit and stop trying to be normal and stop being bigoted, what happens is that you're more willing to listen, which leads to better understanding among TIs, which leads to better community, which leads to more cohesiveness in the community. So being pro differently abled is actually essential to being pro TI as well. Do you understand? So being pro future generations, listening to youngsters, I bet you any money right now there are young TIs out there that don't know their TIs. And I bet they have a lot to offer us in terms of technological knowledge, because a lot of younger people are more tech savvy than we are. But when we don't listen to them, when we think we know better than them because we're older and we're done that, when we do that and we're arrogant, we stand a chance of missing out on real solutions that could help targeted individuals on an emotional level and a practical one. We keep ahead of the curve. We're ahead of the curve. We make sure we know all the different tactics being used these days in order to denigrate TIs and in order to smear us. Now, this is where I got to shout out a certain Voldemort, right? Now, you guys know who he is. I have to admit, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't know how younger people are being brainwashed into siding against TIs. He gets to them through technology. This is what happens when we listen to people who are younger than us, who understand the modern world more than we do. When we listen to them, we have a key as to how we can protect future generations. And on top of that, I'm sorry, but I've got to talk about the corporal punishment, and I've got to talk about the fucking... Look, man, I don't give a damn what you did as a child. You do not deserve to be hit by an adult. Even with these racist ass kids that I'm dealing with, when I say I need... When I came on camera and I said they need their asses whooped, I said by other children. I said by other children, not by no adult. Hell no. I don't care what them kids are doing. They don't deserve to be hit by an adult. No adult should ever, you shouldn't see a little beautiful vulnerable face like that, and the first thing on your mind when they make you angry should be to fucking slap them. That should not be the first thing on your mind. Cute aggression is real, but if your cute aggression is not towards protecting what's cute, that's a problem. I have cute aggression, but when I come over with that, the only thing I want to do is make, if there's anything or anyone that I find completely adorable, all I want to do is make them laugh. And I want them to like me. That's it. I ain't trying to fucking strike nobody. And I'm definitely not trying to emotionally ruin anybody, which, let's be clear, corporal punishment is meant to do. It's meant to emotionally break the child. This is not just about physical discipline. It's to break them down enough to make sure they do what you tell them to do. But all it ever does is lead to them being sneaky or outright rebellious or passive aggressive. I know plenty of people who have gotten their asses whooped. They are not good people. A lot of them are fucking perps. A lot of them wouldn't be perps without the corporal punishment. Let's be fucking real. The way children are hurt, it leads to future generations of hurt as well, especially when we don't deal with it. You seriously think perps don't have PTSD or CPTSD or BPD or any of that shit? You seriously think they don't have it? Why do you think they're perps? It's neurodivergence versus neurodivergence. Trauma versus trauma. The people who pick the fucking perps know what they're doing. The people who picked the perps know exactly what they're doing. Once your mind is molded as a child to follow orders, and that's all you're programmed to do, never underestimate where the banality of that kind of evil can take you. Perps is, we partially have perps because of corporal punishment. Remember what happened to Marina Abramovich in the 1970s or the 1980s? People were getting their asses whooped back then. Look what they turned into. So if you're a TI, you should be listening to the youths about what's going on in the world and how they feel about it, even if we don't agree. Because that will help us to protect TIs of future generations, TI children, TI teenagers, especially those who belong to marginalized groups. Okay? And now I want to get to the last one. Pro-religious freedom. Not being an asshole, basically, about other people's spiritual beliefs. Now, in my last video, I read Bible verses because Ella T. Georgia has a Bible verse as her status on her page. And I thought it was a really good Bible verse to read to honor Sonia Massey, who was a Christian, right? I'm not a Christian, but I respect her right to her God and her Jesus. That name does not offend me, will never offend me. And I feel like, you know, there was power in her faith, but I don't think she should have died for that. There's no way she should have been killed for that. So as a TI, I don't have beef with anybody who's Christian or Islam or, you know, who's Jewish, you know, for the simple reason that if I had any beef with any of those belief systems, that it would go against everything that I stood for. Do you understand what I mean? But that also goes for any TIs who are pagan, or who might be a witch, or who might be witches, or who might be psychic readers. Just because the Bible says certain thing about those tarot readers, it doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. Those people were killed because they didn't want a large group of people being in on Masonic secrets. That's what the Bible was about. It was about preserving Masonic secrets and making sure only people who were initiated knew the ins and outs of alchemy. That's what those holy books were for. And it was also for ruling the masses by having the masses interpret them literally. That's what that's all about. But that's not necessarily the reason why I don't put up with the religious bigotry of any kind. The reason is because if you look at the history of how the Abrahamic faiths became powerful, it meant supplanting smaller sects of those same religions, as well as any older religions which the rich have taken up. The rich have taken up the older religions and given us the new ones so that they could have the power. So when it comes to the Abrahamic faiths and how they supplanted smaller sects of their own religion, and how they supplanted pagan religions and heathen religions of indigenous cultures or indigenous religions, you know, indigenous spirituality, alternative spirituality that calls upon their ancestry. When you consider how the big three, especially Christianity and the Muslim religion, have supplanted those faiths and that spirituality, you understand that's exactly what's being done to us as TIs in relation to the rest of the public. We are being supplanted. Our voices are being supplanted so that the people in power can be free to genocide the rest of the world. Because like I said, they want a white male world. So we're being supplanted as TIs to, you know, to basically help the rest of the world. And as long, you know, I'm the kind of person who says that you should put your spirituality first, and I stand by that. But the problem is where it slides into bigotry, because as long as it slides into bigotry, the energy is not going into actually helping targeted individuals. It's not going into helping targeted individuals. It's not helping targeted individuals economically, physically, spiritually. It's not helping the situation. So the energy that you're spending being bigoted and ignorant is time that could have been spent supporting your fellow TI. It's energy that is taken away from our cause and put onto the same cause that these same people killing us allowed us to have. Do you understand? They allowed us to have that. They allowed us to have these religions that are not as powerful as the old gods they served. They allowed old gods they served. They allowed us to have that shit. Let's be fucking clear. And whilst they're performing rituals in front of our face, knowingly using our fear, knowingly using our xenophobia of anything that isn't Christian or anything that isn't Abrahamic, they know what they're doing. While they're using our fear and performing rituals in front of our faces, we're falling right into that trap by being bigoted against anybody who isn't Christian or anybody who isn't Muslim or even Jewish. It doesn't help anything towards our cause. It just means energy being put into the energy that could be put into the cause is put into shielding your insecurity around your faith. That's not the move. That's not the move. Okay? So in short, if you're not pro-racial equity, if you're not pro-fam and pro-woman, if you're not pro-LGBTQ+, if you're not pro-choice or pro-sex positivity, if you're not pro-differently abled, if you're not pro-children, if you're not pro-religious freedom, understand something. You're not pro-targeted individual. You are not. Let's be fucking real. If you're not pro all of these things, you are not pro-TI. You're simply not. And then on top of that, I'm going to leave you guys with this. I've been an outsider all my life. I've been an outsider all my life. And when I was younger, I was exposed to the pain of being an outsider, because that's when you feel it most, when you're young. And because I was exposed to the pain of being an outsider, to thinking differently to everyone else, I thought it was a curse. Now I know differently. Now I know I am the ultimate outsider. And now I know there is some serious gravitas in that. I'm too queer and witchy to be a TI. I'm too black and woman to be mainstream. I'm too TI to be black, queer and neurospicy. And I'm too neurospicy to be black. And guess what? I'm fucking proud of it. And I'm proud of it because you can't aestheticize truth. And you can't aestheticize the hard work that it takes to make sure that everybody within that intersection survives and thrives and gets out of being oppressed. I am a representation of what that hard work looks like. The hard work is not cute. It might be powerful. It might be fucking boss. It might have a lot of integrity. It might even have some dignity, but it is not cute. I am not cute. There's hard work that it takes to look inward and to do the work, not only for myself as all of these things, but also other people who might not have a voice yet. That is fucking crucial. That's an important side of history to be on. That's something that I am willing to give my whole body and my whole soul and my whole spirit and my whole mind behind. Let's be fucking clear. Now, this idea of intersectionality as a TI, it's already out there in the ether. It's already out there in the ether. It's immortal. It's not going anywhere. But this is what makes me happy. What makes me happy is knowing that even after this program kills me, which it will do in the next few decades at least, this program will kill me. When it does, I would have given my whole body, soul, spirit, and mind to the intersectionality between TIs and marginalized groups, and towards freeing all of us. Because let's be fucking real. You either free all of us or you free none of us. And I'm proud to stand on that side of history, even if I'm standing out there by myself. I'm proud of it. This is one of the few times I'm proud to be an outsider. That I'm proud not to be popular. That I'm proud to stand on the edge. And even if it means, even if I turn out to be wrong, and there are more people out there like me than I thought, the thought of there being more people like me out there, standing on this standing on this soapbox, standing on this, you know, dying on this hill, the fact that there are more people like me willing to give everything to this idea and to make it concrete and to make it stick. Like, either way, whether I'm standing by myself in this or I'm standing with people and not knowing it, I love that. Because it means I'm on the right side of history. And like I said, this is hard work. It's hard work that needs to be put into the truth. The truth cannot be aestheticized. It's hard work to put into the truth, but it's worthy work. And it's work that's on the right side of history. Because let's be fucking honest. The far right, if they get power in this country and in the West, and it looks like they might do, if they get power, the first people they're going to throw under the bus are the TIs that supported them, or TIs in general, regardless of whether or not the TI supported them. If BRICS come in and take over, Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, South Africa, if they come in and take over, we're going to be the first ones on the chopping block anyway. And it's just going to lead to the same thing over and over again. So I would rather stand alone, not siding with one power or the other. I would rather stand alone. I'm proud to stand alone and not pick either side. Go down the middle. I'm proud to fucking do it because it means I'm on the right side of history. There are people who are queer and neurospicy selling me out. Let them. There are people who are black selling me out. Let them. There are people who are poorer or are on benefits selling me out. Let them. There are people within, you know, there are even TIs who are abusive to me. Let them stay over there where they are. Family, friends, lovers, let them all do what they do. Because I know where I stand. And there is nothing in the world more important than that. I'm glad to be on this side. This is one of the few times in my life where I'm glad to be an outsider. It means I'm on the right side of history. That's all I ever needed to be. I did not need to be famous. I did not need the attention. I did not need any of that. I just needed to know where I belonged. And now I do. So, yeah, that was it. If you made it this far into the video, please let me know how you guys are doing. I want to hear from you guys. As long as you're not bigoted, I want to hear from you guys. But yeah, I love you very much. Peace and blessings. You guys take care of yourselves. Bye bye, my darlings. Hang on. It's not letting me go. It's got, yeah. Bye bye.